Gentleman yields. Mr. LaHood is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all of our witnesses for your valuable testimony here today on this important subject that we're talking about. There was some reference earlier about the election and maybe the insignificance regarding the results of the election, or somehow this was not a mandate on what happened in the election. And this is our first full hearing really since the election. And I guess I look at the election results a little differently. If we were sitting here 6 months ago and I would tell you that Donald Trump would win all 7 swing states, that he'd win the popular vote, would win record amounts of African-American males and a record amount of Latino males, I don't think anybody would have believed us. But that was the results of what happened. And the other thing that never changed in the election, if you look over the last year, was 72% of the country thought we were headed in the wrong direction based on the economy and immigration. It never changed. We're headed in the wrong direction. And you drill down on that, on the economics, and we've alluded to it here today, the insecurities and the anxiety that the American people had. Lower middle class people felt it. Devastating inflation, cost of living increases, lower wages, lack of economic optimism, and anxiety on living the American dream. And that was reflected in the election results. And so when we think about those results, that's the reality. That's the mandate we have to fulfill those campaign promises that we made on fixing the economy. What better way to do that than continue the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from 2017? Go back to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and again, we've talked about some of the results from that here today. I would argue, my 9 years I've been in Congress, it's the most important and most impactful vote that I've taken in voting for the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, in what it did for the American economy. Created the best economy in my lifetime. You look at what it did to the economy: higher wages, record employment, record number of investment in small and medium-sized businesses. It created a booming economy. But even going a little further, we moved 6.5 million people out of poverty. People don't talk about that enough. It was the largest migration of people leaving poverty, leaving welfare programs to go into our economy under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That's the reality of what happened. So why wouldn't we want to continue that, particularly with the election results we just had? I would also mention, on the international side, particularly what we did on GILTI and BEAT and the international tax provisions, we repatriated $3.5 trillion back to the United States. No one talks about inversions anymore. Pre-TCJA, companies were inverting all around the globe, going to other places. No one inverts anymore because of the changes we made, bringing that $3.5 trillion back to this country. Those are the tangible, real results that we had from TCJA. Now, I'll admit COVID got in the way of that growth path. I think we all admit that. But what better way now to continue that growth and get back on track with those real results than making these tax cuts permanent? And that's why we're really here today. So a couple things. As we begin, I just want to mention 2 goals that we should be accomplishing. One, we need to ensure that the tax cuts are preserved. And if we let them expire at the end of this year, the average taxpayer in my district would see a 22% tax hike in 2026. And I know that percentage is similar to a lot of other districts. This is simply unacceptable. And we need to work together to ensure that we're protecting the full gamut of taxpayers, whether they are individuals, working families, small businesses, family farms, and so on. The second goal, and I hope we can accomplish in addition, is extending the Trump tax cuts. And it's for us to consider the tax proposals that address some of the new challenges that we are seeing in the country today. There are common sense reforms already out there that address affordable housing, child care, and taxation of Americans living overseas. And I hope we can look to better support working families and ensure our tax code is more pro-growth and even-handed. Ms. Gallagher, I do have a question for you. My district that I represent in central and northwest Illinois, large number of family farms, family-owned small manufacturing companies. I wonder if you could talk, you alluded to it in your statement you made, about what can be done for farms and small businesses if we were to let the estate tax exemption be cut in half at the end of this year due to the expiring tax cuts. Can you talk about what that would mean to businesses?
Yes, and thank you for that great question. It will impact at least twice, maybe 3 times as many of what I say unexpected families. I think most are oblivious to potentially this estate tax exemption being cut in half. Many small businesses, yes, they do have advisors, and we do our best to advise our clients on these things. But the middle-class businesses are the ones who will be unexpecting of this and will not have, in my opinion, the time or money to hire the accountants and estate planners to develop the estate plan that can protect those assets. I would also comment that farmers in particular are most at a disadvantage. Manufacturers and companies are as well because they have very illiquid assets. Farmers in particular, their values of their land continue to increase. It's very valuable, but you can't just pull cash out of it unless you sell some of it, or there's no cash there to pay that estate tax. So it can be devastating to a family when they don't have the cash to pay that estate tax, and they need to plan.
Thank you.